we're already in a situation where, of course, the former Google employee Blake Lemoine believed that ChatGTP and large language models like that might be displaying an early form of sentience. It raises the question what is consciousness, and how could we tell whether an AI program was truly sentient or was just doing a very good job of mimicking sentience? Could you tell those two things apart?
Right now on Higher Journeys with Alexis Brooks. I know you know Nick Pope. Nick is ubiquitous. He's a ubiquitous figure in the field of ufology, ancient aliens, and a wealth of knowledge, and a friend. And I'm so delighted that we're going to continue this conversation, Nick. We went into the strangeness of UFOs and beyond. You know, lots of different directions we can go in. UAP, I should say. But I want to touch on something in this short segment, that you brought up, I believe, in a recent lecture that you gave at the Ozark Mountain UFO Conference in Arkansas, where you touched on this idea of the imminence of sentient AI, essentially AI that is proactive, for lack of a better word, and not necessarily just taking direction, but actually perhaps establishing a consciousness of its own. Where do we want to start here? I have a couple stories I want to share, but let me have you open that up first, and we'll take it from there.
Sure. I first became interested in this way back in 2010 when I attended 2 Royal Society discussion meetings in the UK. And one of the people there, and this was about the societal impacts of discovering extraterrestrial life. And they were multidisciplinary events. So there were sort of cosmologists and astrophysicists and astronomers there, but there were also theologians, philosophers, anthropologists, psychologists. And one of the speakers was NASA's former chief historian, Stephen Dick. And he used a phrase which really stuck in my mind. And he was talking about the difficulties, of course, of space travel in terms of, firstly, and I know, current understanding of the laws of physics, but also some of the dangers and hardships, whether it's gamma ray bursts or micrometeors. And, for all those reasons, people were speculating, well, isn't it more likely that if extraterrestrials are visiting us, that they would send probes, and maybe some of those probes would be artificial intelligence? And Stephen Dick used the phrase, we might be living in a largely post-biological universe populated largely by immortal thinking machines. And that was like one of those wow quotes that you think, wait, am I at a science fiction convention or am I at the Royal Society? And I was at the Royal Society, but it stuck with me. And now, of course, that was 2010. Now we're having a much more, I think, immediate debate about AI and what the threats and the opportunities might be. We're already in a situation where, of course, the former Google employee Blake Lemoine, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, believed that ChatGTP and large language models like that might be displaying an early form of sentience.
Really?
And so, yeah, it raises the question. I mean, of course, this is where neuroscience meets almost philosophy, where what is consciousness, and how could we tell whether an AI program was truly sentient or was just doing a very good job of mimicking sentience? Could you tell those two things apart?
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't, where do we give the benefit of the doubt when it comes to considering things like personhood rights, which of course is a debate people are already having about, for example, some of the great apes. Should we give them personhood rights, the right to life, the right to freedom from slavery and imprisonment, those sorts of things. When do we start having that discussion about artificial intelligence?
Right. Right. I think that's already started. I mean, if I'm
It
not
has,
mistaken,
yes, but it needs to become a little bit more
oh,
mainstream.
well, a lot more. But if I recall, Nick, the probably one of the most famous AI robots out there still is Sophia, and I believe wasn't it Sophia that went to, was it Dubai or the Emirates? Oh, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was some debate over whether to give her personhood rights. There was something
Yes,
having to do.
yes. I think I can't recall how that discussion ended,
Hmm,
if indeed it has come to a resolution. But at the moment, these are just test cases. But this is, when we look at Moore's law and the exponential rise that we've seen in computer processing power, and the fact that we've come a long way in such a little time, these are conversations that we are going to have in the next few years for sure,
yeah.
and have not just in the niche AI community, but we're going to have to get in lawyers and legislators.
Oh, there's no question. But well, again, if we're particularly bringing in this idea of transhumanism, and which there is a very vocal camp that believes this is a good thing and this is the next evolutionary step in Homo sapiens sapien, save for the fact that it wouldn't be Homo sapiens sapien anymore.
It would
Uh,
be, well, as David Bowie sung, "Got to make way for the Homo superior."
mm,
I think, was that in Starman? I can't remember which of his songs, but he talked about that. And of course, then there are the ethical issues that if we have these neural implants and
mm,
upgrades, whatever they are, like pretty much everything at first, it will initially be for the super wealthy. Then there are there's the pushback. I remember 10 years ago there was a campaign in Britain under the slogan "We the people will not be chipped," talking
right.
about subdermal microchips and things.
Hmm.
But then it's like the house always wins. It's like they're making it. If you think about how we navigate our lives, it's becoming more and more difficult not, for example, to have a smartphone in terms of, whether it's making a purchase or verifying your identity for your bank or whatever it might be. It's not impossible, but it's getting harder, and
Of
you
course
can
it is.
tell that they're making it harder because
Yeah.
they want to sell you stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. We're getting into something that I could we don't have time to get into now. Maybe another time because I have some strong thoughts and some conflicts actually with where do we go next with AI, or where do we allow it to go with us? I'll put on the record, I am an advocate of the authentic human, and I believe there's a lot of inner technology that we've yet to tap. We had a great not necessarily debate. It could have gone in that direction, Nick. At Contact in the Desert, you were not on this panel, but I was the only woman on the what was it called? Alan Steinfeld hosted it with William Henry, your Ancient Aliens mate, as well. I had William Henry on one side of me. I had Paul Hynek on the other, and then on the other table we had Brad Olson, Adam Apollo, and another gentleman whose name I can't call. And I'll tell you, I don't know if you've ever talked to William Henry about this very specific subject, but he is adamant about against some of the ways that they're working AI into our lives, and I tended
Yes,
to agree. I
I
tended
think
to agree. I'm
he
concerned.
talks about it in terms of an existential threat, and I understand. I think when we were talking at the Italian restaurant or somewhere in the margins of that, you told me that panel got pretty lively.
Oh, it was great though, but it was great, and yeah, it did get lively. And if you want any conversation to get lively, you stay on that because we've got. Oh boy, it's going to get really interesting in the next couple of years or so. I've used Chat GPT, by the way, and guess what? I kind of love it. Oh my God. Not as a replacement, but to augment. And this is the key. I'll make this statement, then we'll move on. Look, I think that there's a camp that wants us to be replaced by it. I will never be of that camp. However, Am I for human improvement? Am I for having help in our evolutionary leaps? Absolutely. But know when to draw the line. I mean, look, you and I both are authors. I love writing, and there's no way I'm going to let AI usurp that creative process. But can it be helpful? Unequivocally, yes, it can. Yes.
Yes, no, completely. 2 years ago, so this you've got to think how quickly the technology is moving. I think 2 years ago, I wrote an introduction to one of my presentations at Contact in the Desert, I think it was, or it may have been Conscious Life Expo. I can't remember which. And I read it out, and I say I don't normally read my intros. I just shoot from the hip, but I wanted to put something a little special together for you, and people like listened, and they were like, okay. And then I paused and I said, AI wrote that, and I knew how to do the prompts, so I didn't just say write an introduction to my speech.
Right.
I said, using the published writings of Nick Pope, write an introduction to a presentation on new technologies, which and it was seamless, and there were gasps of astonishment in the audience that it could do that, because it was, to all intents and purposes, speaking with my voice, and yet it was not me.
Well, that's both exciting and a little creepy at the same time. Yeah. And I've had Richard Dolan and I have had a pretty deep dive conversation on this, because he's been pretty vocal about his thoughts on, particularly with ChatGPT. He's had debates with ChatGPT around the whole UAP issue. So I don't know if you had a chance to see a show or two that he did on that, but
I've not. I'll look out for them.
look out for that. A few months ago, so I had a conversation with him post that to get more insight on that. But let's a couple quick stories. We have a few more minutes. Couple quick stories when it comes to how far has AI gone already. Let me give you a couple what I'd call anomalous anecdotes, Nick, and the audience. Tell me what you think. So, Robin, if you're listening, I'm taking this from you, girl. This is one of my friends and followers who shared this story with me personally, and it had to do with two incidents. One in which I'll see if I can give you the short sheet. She's in the car with her daughter. I believe they were in Arizona. They were driving somewhere in Arizona. I don't know where, near Phoenix, and had on obviously the GPS. Maybe it was Waze. I don't know. And basically, it was giving the directions, female voice, and I'll just make something up. So in 2 miles, you're going to take a right, or in 2 miles, take exit 29B. That's what normally it would say as an example. This voice said, in 2 miles, take exit. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. In 3 miles, take exit. Da, da, da. And she corrected herself, Nick. And the daughter looked at Rob and her mother and said, Mom, did you hear that? She's like, yeah, I did. They were aghast. You can only imagine. It's as if it was live and has the the ability to make mistakes. It had to self-correct itself. It was giving the wrong direction, said and cleared her throat and said, excuse me, I'm sorry, take in 3 miles, and I can't remember what the specific thing was, but you get the message. Okay. No comment yet. Let me give you number 2. This is the same person this happened to. Another scenario. This time she's with her son, Robin. They're in their kitchen. And she had, of course, the Echo or Alexa. Let's call it an Alexa. The son wanted to hear a song played by Tupac Shakur. And as always, he says, Alexa, play California Dreamin' by Tupac Shakur, let's say. No response. He says it again. Alexa, I want you to play blah, blah, blah by Tupac Shakur. He says it a third time, no response. So Robin is in the kitchen with her son. She's like, looks like Alexa's going to need to find a new job. Joking. Alexa, the voice then comes in and says, oh dear, it looks like I better start brushing off my resume.
Right. Wow. Very interesting.
True stories. Thoughts, given in the context of what we're talking about here? Come on, what is this?
Well, some people say that these are the first signs of an emerging consciousness, I guess.
God.
And and this is where it ceases to become just a machine, and it becomes sentient. But as I say, how could we ever tell? How and this is where neuroscience meets philosophy, because
Right.
how could you tell if something is a perfect? I mean, it's a philosophy thing. If something is a perfect copy and is indistinguishable from the original, is it, to all intents and purposes, the original?
It's interesting that you should say this. We'll end on this note. It was Ray Kurzweil, as many people know, big proponent of transhumanism and the singularity, who said, and I won't I'll paraphrase the quote, but essentially he was talking about the merits or the effectiveness of when this transition takes place, and in terms of going from Homo sapiens sapiens to a transhumanist future, and all these elements that we're talking about. And he says basically, we will be able to give the masses such a good facsimile, they won't know the difference between what's real and what's been created for them. I'll find the quote and send it to you. It's actually quite
Right.
fascinating. It's essentially mimicking exactly what you said. Yeah, that's what Ray Kurzweil said. It will be such a good facsimile, they won't know the difference, essentially, whatever we decide to do. And that's
Yeah.
what's disturbing, frankly, Nick, to me.
Yes, but like I always say, and it's a philosophy that I get from my government service. Government looks at everything and asks two questions: what are the threats and what are the opportunities? And hopefully it's not just threats, but opportunities too.
Yeah, it could be. Well, remember what we said on the main show? It's not this or that, but this and that. So that's one of those things that we can really kind of chew on. One quick thought, and we'll close on this idea of sentient craft. People have talked about it.
Yes, and again, we come full circle with this, because I remember, I think it was way back, I don't remember personally, but in the 50s, there was I believe, I don't know if he was British, I think he is, but there was an author called Trevor James Constable who wrote about, coined the phrase, I think, sky critters. And the theory there was that UFOs, or flying saucers as the terminology was at the time, weren't craft, they were entities. And now, of course, we've come full circle. This idea is coming back into fashion with the idea that they're not maybe biological entities, but they are AI entities, sentient AI, perhaps originally designed and programmed by extraterrestrial biologicals, but which went beyond their programming and evolved into life, post-biological life, machine intelligence. And so, yeah, people look at whether it's the Tic Tac incident or these spheres, and now one of the theories is this sentient AI? And if it is, instead of landing on the White House lawn and saying, "Take me to your leader," is it going to reach out digitally to our most advanced AI systems? So wouldn't it be an irony if first contact is not with humanity, but is extraterrestrial AI reaching out to our AI systems? And some people say that's what we need to look for, because that's how it will likely unfold. And just as cybersecurity people can tell if a hacker's been in the system because of the digital fingerprints, maybe we could find those digital fingerprints.
Wow. How about that? We're going to leave it there. My goodness. Yeah, Nick, it's all on the table. Indeed. Let's stay vigilant either way. Let's keep our eyes and ears and hearts open. And let's prepare ourselves for a wild ride, because it's going to get more intense, not less. So, Nick Pope, listen, as always, a pleasure to be in your presence, sir. And I hope we get to do it in person in the not too distant future again, because it's always fun being with you.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Alexis, for having me on the show and the after show. And I will see you before, I'm sure, either when we're filming together or at one of the conferences that we'll both speak at. So I look forward to it either way.
As do I. And I always look forward to seeing y'all out there in the Higher Journeys audience. Thanks again for joining us. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.